We're going to talk about the culting of America and what's going on right now. And I have a cover, but I still can't show that. But I can show this one little piece.
Or show us a little piece.
That I'm very excited about. Oh, wait.
Ooh,
can we
so
read it? How do I unmirror? Oh, no. I don't know if I can.
I don't know how to unmirror when I'm live.
I don't know either. Anyway, it says cults always promise space travel. And that's like the theme. And what's interesting, because I was just looking at that chapter now where I talk about cults always promise space travel, because it's all about the mission of the cult and how the cult will weaponize a mission. That chapter is a lot about Mormons, because the Mormons are really good at weaponizing the mission.
Right now, just talking about the mission, like that hits for me.
And that, what's happening right now with MAGA, with the Epstein list, is, I think people that aren't realizing, it's like that was the mission. Like the mission was, we're going to drain the swamp, and we're going to do that by getting these Dems, right? Like getting the Dems, getting the liberals, getting the bad guys, save the children. And then
they are just bad guys.
And then he just evaporated the mission, right? But I've been getting a lot of this question of like, why this? Like, why is this their line in the sand? And one of the things I always want to say is like, line in the sands are not real, right? You just go like this and they're gone. This was the mission. And I would argue there's nothing bad enough that will turn a cult on a leader once they're like fully brainwashed in, right? Up to and including the death of one's own children, right? There's nothing bad enough that will make them turn. But when you all of a sudden evaporate the mission, that's a big deal. And that's actually what happened to Children of God. I think sort of accidentally. They were trying to, I think, like give their people more space, modernize. And they were like, maybe Jesus is not coming back in our lifetime.
So the mission
but that was the mission, right? The mission the entire time for Children of God was Jesus is coming back. He's told our prophet this. It's going to start any day now. We got to win the world.
Ready on the set? Let's try this again.
I'm Jennie Gage, and this is Life Take 2.
Hi, friends. You're listening to Life Take 2, the podcast for anyone who's ever had to start over. Life Take 2 is a podcast for anyone who's ever had to start over. I'm Jennie Gage, writer, grandma, mom, podcaster, survivor, and everyone's internet big sister. This show is a place for survivors of cults, bad men, all kinds of bad things, seekers, rebuilders, and anyone who's ever whispered, well, this wasn't my life plan. Each week, I talk to someone who's lived through a major life transition: divorce, loss, religious deconstruction, addiction recovery, career pivots, gender identity, retirement, spiritual awakening, you name it. Because life isn't a straight line. Sometimes we jump off the path on purpose. Sometimes we got knocked off course, maybe even pushed off by someone or something. And when that happens, you get a life take two. And I personally feel that these life take two people have greater wisdom and insight than anyone else on the planet. And that's reason number one why I am so excited to talk to Daniella today, because Knitting Cult Lady here had a very distinctive life take two. And I believe, Daniella, that the things that you went through and this perspective that you have on the other side gives you insight into things that most people just don't have. I first saw you here on TikTok as I was deconstructing Mormonism, and some of the perspective that you shared literally helped me stay out of my cult and not fall into the traps of another cult. So I have so appreciated all the conversations that we have. And I'll be honest, anytime there's anything that's like culty going on, where there's a movement of people that seem to be acting a little bit off the rails, I always want to ask you. So I'll pop over to your lives and I'm down here in your comments like, Daniella, help me understand. And I cannot wait for you to help us understand what is going on in the MAGA world today. So will you introduce yourself and tell me why you do what you do for my audience that doesn't completely know you? Although most of them do.
Absolutely. So I'm a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. And I wrote one book called UnCultured, and it was just sort of my memoir of growing up in the Children of God cult and then going into what I call the cult of the US Army. And I paralleled these two things. And I did this while I was watching a cult leader run the country the first time. Right. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? Something's going on. At the same time, I got my master's in organizational psychology. And then roughly 2.5 years ago, I started writing this book called The Culting of America. And I was like, I wonder if folks out there want to know this stuff, right? Like, want to know all of this stuff in my brain about cults and about bad guys. And more importantly, like all this stuff I'm going to be reading and putting together. This book has a 36-page bibliography. So I have done this very, I feel like, extensive review of cult literature out there. And one of the things I truly think people who didn't have extreme childhoods are not understanding right now is like, this is a cult, like people really seem to believe that there is some difference between Donald Trump and Jim Jones. And even when I say this, they go, oh, well, the difference is Donald Trump would charge you for the Kool-Aid. And I'm like, bro, Jim Jones didn't give it to them for free, right? Like there really is no difference, right? This is what folks have been warning about for 50 years when they said extremists are going to get the White House, right? This cult, I just call it the cult of racist conservatism, had been building since about the 80s, right? I mean, I was very worried in 2012 when the Mormons were sort of close to getting the White House because I was like, we know what we're going to see, right? And so now we're seeing it being played out. And I think, one of the things I realized in this literature review is cult experts say that all cults are the same, which I absolutely agree with, right? We see these patterns. That also means like that there's a generic cult baby experience, which is one of the reasons I'm writing Cult Baby the musical, veterans included.
Are you really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
I halfway scripted.
Daniella and I are both from cults, and I was a form of Mormonism. I mean, I was just regular Mormonism, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But my family was intense. The communities I lived in were intense, and I was a white supremacist, prepper, crazy girl. And so I just left MAGA. Like, Daniella, I don't even want to admit this. And I've just been talking about this over on my YouTube this week. And I want to cry even saying this right now with you. I just left MAGA 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago. I left Mormonism 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm still like, well, I don't want people to kill babies. And I still don't know if gay people
right.
married or not. Like, I still had so many things that I needed to unpack. So we both come from cults. And the way that I explain cults, I think of it as like a cookie cookbook. And there's all these different recipes. You may have your snickerdoodles, you may have your brookies, you may have some lemon snap or something, but they're all still just cookies. It's just your basic like butter, sugar, flour. And your Children of God cult, it was maybe the snickerdoodles, and mine was like a key lime pie cookie, but it's still just a bunch of cookies, and it's basically the same recipe.
Yeah. And I think it's like, to even go with this analogy, it's like, and they're all desserts, and they're on this spectrum of desserts for like organizations, right? Let's say from like high control to low control. So I have this definition, which is like a 10-part definition, and there's not an easy definition of cult, right? Which is one of the complicated things. But one of the things that I have done is to say, like, what are we trying to say when we say cult? Right? Like, we all know what we're trying to say, and we all hate that bro that's like, actually, the word cult is not pejorative. It started back in the days of ISIS. Like, okay, thanks. When we are saying somebody's in a cult or this thing is a cult, right? I think we are trying to say that this person has come under coercive control. And so this is why I say, so there are no good cults, right? The opposite of cult is a group that doesn't like control you and coerce you. And the opposite of cult leader is not good cult leader. It's leader that doesn't manipulate you.
So can I tell you my definition? I actually wrote this down because leaving Mormonism and really intense Mormonism and MAGA and the prepping, like I read the same books that Lori Vallow Daybell read and I believed them, right? So I was an extremist. So to me, here's my understanding of cults. And part of this I got from you. Everyone has to have UnCultured in their home. Whether you've been in a cult, whether you care about cults, you should because they're ruling the world. UnCultured helped me kind of form my definition of cults. So my understanding is that like we as humans have some very interesting instincts and they are these beautiful cooperative behaviors that keep us glued together as cohesive tribes. Things like pattern recognition, things like imitation of other people's behaviors. These are these beautiful evolutionary instincts that help us have bonds and tribes and human societies and work cooperatively and not just kill each other off. It's a problem and it becomes a cult when you have a manipulator who wants to control everyone and they hijack those really beautiful human instincts and take power over our minds. And we're no longer forming our own behaviors. We're no longer guiding our own thoughts. We are now being controlled by somebody else through the manipulation of all of those instincts that the cult leaders just absolutely hijack. And you really helped me know what to look out for.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is. And then I just add like the why, like why they're doing that is to get your labor. You know, it's like they get power through the labor of others, which is in part how we measure power in our society. There's this very interesting stereotype in our culture that we start these great organizations wanting to help people, wanting to like, you know, use these natural instincts that you talk about, these group behaviors, and then they just accidentally turn into cults. And I just kind of don't believe this at all, right? And I think one of the big differences between a cult and like a regular religious organization is this one actually intended to form to help society get along better, right? And this one was always about manipulation, right? I don't think people just like build an organization and then just suddenly decide to start coercing and manipulating.
So you're saying that if like I have this group of people and we're going to start this little church or organization or whatever, you don't think that cult leaders accidentally somewhere along the line turn into cult leaders. They go into it wanting to coerce and control people. These are control freaks.
Yes. And I don't know of one situation of like a well-known cult that we know about and we look back and we can't see like they were controlling this whole time, right? But we don't tell the story that way. Nobody says like Jim Jones at 5 years old was already practicing charismatic preaching and how to manipulate people and was already threatening his friends and animals and whatnot with violence.
Yes, yeah.
Which he was. We start off saying, you know, in the 50s, he just wanted to build an interracial church and blah, 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 right? People talk about the children of God and they'll say the joiners, my parents and grandparents and like our people. And they'll say, well, you know, in the early days, it was just about love and faith in Jesus. And nobody says, no, in the early days, he had already abused both of his daughters and forced his sons to let him have sex with their wives in front of them. You know, like it didn't start off good and accidentally go bad. And I honestly, the more and more I study, I just start to think like there are tools, right? Influence is a societal tool, right? And everyone that is good at influencing people then has to decide, are they doing that for good or are they doing that for themselves? You know, and I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? Because who decides what's good and bad? But I think the majority of people, if you learn to be a good salesman, what you want to do is go do sales. You know, you don't want to, you're just hoping to get an honest sales job, right? Like you're not hoping to fall into an MLM that then like coerces you and teach you how to deceptively sell.
I've been in a few
people, I think, find these tools, right? Like when the US government learned about brainwashing, they said, how can we use this as a weapon, right? So I think some people learn these tools and then they're like, now I'm going to use it to manipulate people. And honestly, I think we all watched Elon Musk go on this arc of just like, now I'm going full on supervillain, but it's like, now I'm going after power for power's sake, and I'm going to use and abuse people. And it's no longer like pretending to be humanitarian. I just think these people never were in the beginning. Like, part of the con is this idea that it all started off good. And it's like, no, it was always a con, right? 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 50 years ago, when this political party started coming together, it always was about manipulating and getting the outcomes that they wanted.
And that's the problem. It's getting the outcomes that they wanted. So I'm not a political commentator and I'm not a cult expert, which is why I wanted to talk to you today, because you are. But I was married to a charismatic, benevolent narcissist who has a whole bucket full of mental health problems. So I was married to him why he could have started a cult of his own. And again, not a political commentator, but I'm somebody who is married to one of these type of guys, right? So I look at Donald Trump and it's like, we don't need CNN and political commentary on what he's doing. We need former survivors of narcissistic abuse, because we're the ones who actually know who these guys are that start these huge movements. And in the very beginning, it was the enthusiasm, it was the love. It's, we're going to build this beautiful family and have this amazing life. And so that's who I thought he was. And then 24 years into our marriage, when I found out that he'd been cheating on me the whole time and involved in all of these illegal activities, I was so stunned. It's like, but like, you sold me on this beautiful family and this dream of us building a life together. And he's like, oh yeah, no, that was all fake. Like, I wanted to make money. He came from this really good family, and he was using me as a stepladder to build the life that he wanted. And he was never actually engaged in the mission that he was selling to me. So I had this moment of, oh my God, the whole thing was a lie. I believed what I wanted to see. I believed what I wanted to believe.
You don't always get like quite that clear of a confirmation that they knew it was a game the whole time. But like, I think they do, right? It's like Jim Jones knew he was staging his faith healings, as did the people who were around him. And this goes into the little teaser. I think it's the best line of the book, where I talk about cults always promise space travel. And it's because like the ultimate promise of what you're trying to achieve has to be in another time, in another life, in another planet, on another level, right? In another body, even sometimes back in time, right? Because
I can't give you something right
they
now.
know. And because they know it's a con, right? Like, they know that it's all about this. And then I don't know if this is just because they're sociopaths, that it's like, but they do think they're different. Each of them also thinks that they're the one that's going to win. And that's what's funny about studying them. I'm like, because they all study each other, but they don't seem to study bad guys for the reason of avoiding the pitfalls, or like learning out how to also not fail.
Like someone says, Elon Musk promising space travel to Mars. I've never thought about that before, but you say that all cult leaders promise space travel. And certainly within the Mormon church, I was going to die, be resurrected, go to Kolob, and become a god.
I heard y'all don't have the planet anymore. I heard they
like that, but it's still doctrinal, and they can't take it away. Like, I'm not letting them do that.
So last Trump administration, he founded the Space Force, right? And I was literally like hopping around my house going like, it's culty, it's culty, it's culty. Like, I don't know. But we had this in the cult. And I've learned, like, when I see something I grew up with in the cult, and then I see it again in like the army or the government or whatever, I'm like, okay, it's either about programming and influence, or it's about power and control. And in our cult, like, our prophet had said, like, we were going to die and we were going to go to Heavenly City, which is literally inside the moon. He gave us literal dimensions for the size of this pyramid of gold that lived inside the moon, a la Noah's Ark. We were so isolated that it took a couple years for someone to actually realize those dimensions did not fit inside the moon. At which point he went full on, well, who are you going to believe? Scientists or God's prophet? They don't know how to measure the moon. Like, they're just guessing, right? And everyone just went along with it. I say cults always promise space travel. It's a heuristic, right? Just like the skinny white woman to help us think about things, or another phrase I love, all cults are sex cults, and it's like, it's I thought about the space travel thing, and it's like, I think it's actually fundamental to coercive control that you are promising something that can't quite be delivered on. And this goes back to the mission, right? The transcendent mission. It's always something that's like just ahead of us, just around the corner, because they need you to push past all the crap, right? And that's part of, I think, what's really going on with MAGA right now is like for a lot of people, this Epstein list thing was a crack in the brainwashing.
Yes.
And they have all pushed themselves back things they never would have gone along with. Like, nobody in the Republican Party 20 years ago thought they were going to be cool with voting for a 3-time divorced man who paid off porn stars, right? Like, they all have gone along with things that they wouldn't have been okay with because this mission was so important, right? And this is what we are pushing towards.
So
And
what did you say is the MAGA mission?
so I think he kind of came in with drain the swamp, which then really turned into like the means of doing that was going to be the Epstein list, right? Like the MAGA mission is that Donald Trump and his army of MAGA folks are going to come in. They're going to completely undo the government, right? And like pull all these horrible, bad liberals down and create their Christian theology. But the really like moving piece of this mission has been, I think, for the past 5 years at least, like this Epstein list. Like, we're going to get this. They said it's there, right? Like, we're going to get this. We're going to own the libs and prove to you all that these are the bad guys. And really, it's still always about, we are number one. We're going to punish the enemies, right? We're going to have these big moments of judgment and Armageddon.
And Trump has a lot of that, I have to say. And as someone who is former MAGA, I loved to have an enemy so that I could help be part of a movement that was basically shooting that enemy down so that now we can have this beautiful, wholesome, godly country. That was my personal mission. I had been obviously indoctrinated into Mormonism. And my mission in life as a daughter of my Heavenly Father who loved me and I loved him, as someone who had been saved for these latter days and raised by godly parents, my personal mission, which was then the collective mission of Mormonism, of my conservative communities that I lived in, and then I pictured the mission of the United States of America, which had been formed by God's own hand. That mission was to bring this godly peace across the whole entire world. So I was on board with MAGA because there were so many enemies out there that I felt like I was now part of a team of people fighting those enemies. And Trump is really good at this. He has villainized and dehumanized so many people. He can't have a conversation without, stinky Joe Biden and horrible Joe Biden and disgusting, ugly Kamala Harris. And everybody's like the worst piece of garbage in the world. So even as he's speaking, he's villainizing and demonizing everyone, which then makes his followers go like, well, I'm fighting against this person too. And Epstein, huge thing. Let's make America safe for our children. And as a mom, it's like, yeah, I have teenage daughters. I don't want them to get sucked into some sex ring. And I don't want guys like Epstein to exist. It just made me sick to learn about Epstein to begin with. And Trump is like, we're going to fight against him. Come with me. We're going to take care of this guy. But then he also has some other really major players, illegals. And the way he talks about them eating the dogs and cats. And he shows all of his ads on TV about, here's a mom and her 19-year-old college daughter was gunned down on the streets by an illegal immigrant. He should have been back in Costa Rica or whatever, but stupid, sleepy Joe Biden let him back into the country. And I felt like Trump really got me on board with, we collectively are going to drain the entire swamp. We're going to get rid of all the criminals that are running the Mexican mafia. We're going to get rid of the trans people that are in the bathrooms trying to predatorize our kids. And for me as a mom, Trump really had me invested because I felt like he was going to make this world safer for my children.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much with like racism involved in this, let's just say as well, which I think is one of the reasons that like Mormonism fit so well into this because Mormonism already kind of glorifies this idea of like the white blonde children, right? Like the perfect, well-behaved, beautiful throwback children. And it's like, first of all, this is one of the things I talk about with my like personal life is like the shiny religious trafficking. So like it's very much in the benefit for the leaders of America, the religious leaders of America, for people to have this perspective that like stranger danger, right? Like outsiders are terrible, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile,
Yes, they're terrible. Like there's always a different enemy with every generation.
right. And meanwhile, what's actually going on is what's always been going on is the people closest to the children are the ones hurting them.
So I've had a question about that. That's actually top of my list here. I want you to explain because you say this a lot, and I totally encourage everyone to go watch the Epstein video on Daniella's YouTube over on Knitting Cult Lady, because it hurt my brain. I couldn't sleep for a couple days just listening to everything over there. But you say nobody saying save the children is actually for the children, and I rewound and listened to that little bit a couple times. Can you explain to me what you mean by that? And I don't want that to be true, but I feel like it is. Nobody saying save the children is actually for the children.
It's just because there's like so many ways you can be helping children if you actually want to. I think as of right now, child marriage is still legal in 37 states. We are one of the few countries that has not signed on the UN rights for children, partially because military recruiting isn't allowed under the age of 18, partially because corporal punishment as a child who was just trafficked in front of the entire world. It's like nobody is ever actually here to help the children. Children pay taxes without representation. There's all these different things that people that actually want to do are doing. There are people out there in every state fighting for legislation to end marriage under the age of 18 for any reason. And so people can go get involved in those things, but it's usually just this kind of feel good thing, right? Like someone out there is hurting some hypothetical children and we're going to focus on those instead of like the actual children being harmed, having to perform and dance and contribute to their own lie of, oppression. So yeah, I just think the people actually helping the children are out there doing it. They're not out there like waving banners and saying save the children. And there's just so often that we have seen save the children tie back to hate groups. At this point, I'm like, that's never really what it's about from the beginning, from the top, from like where the energy is coming from.
Do you feel like there's a little bit of scapegoating and like smoke and mirrors and like coming in and saying we're going to illegalize abortion because we're going to save the babies and we're going to save the children from the 12 trans athletes that happen to be out there. We're going to save the children by releasing the Epstein Files and making sure that something like this never happens again. It scapegoats a few people that are then villainized, and the majority gets to keep doing exactly what they're doing.
So that's exactly right.
Like we're going to put all of the blame on Jeffrey Epstein for every bad thing that's ever happened in America. Meanwhile, how many millions of clicks are there into Cornhub in 1 hour, which is just like the guy next door, and half of my neighbors are probably on it. And then we don't have to look in a mirror. It's kind of like smoke and mirrors where it's like, this is there. And we don't
want. This is even true in American culture in general. I remember when my child was like 2 and I heard this statistic that stranger kidnappings are not more common in America than they are in continental Europe. And I was like, what? Right? Because we are like, so afraid of that. And I always watched this afterward, especially American moms, I would say, like we are implicated with the fear of if we look away, our child's gone forever, right? Dead, great, gone. If we are looking at our phones on a playground, like they're gone. And the reality is for something to go right, like a stranger kidnapping, like everything has to go right? It's very uncommon. But really, the people hurting your children are the people watching them at church, right? Or the people that they are supposed to be confessing to, right? So we play up this stranger threat when the reality is it is the people in our own homes, in our own communities, who are the ones, and our own churches, of course, who are the ones hurting the children.
Right. And that's where somebody just said in the comments that there's a difference between lying and smoke and mirrors. Lying to people isn't the most effective manipulation tactic. And I felt like in my own cult that I spent 44 years in, deeply entrenched in Mormon prepping, white supremacy, etc. Lying, sometimes you start to see those kinks, but sometimes you just want to deflect. Smoke and mirrors is look over there, and then I don't have to outright lie about it. Like Donald Trump didn't have to outright lie and say anything about Epstein. He didn't have to tell outright lies. He would deflect and make people look over there, and then nobody's going to fact check him. He's just making you look somewhere else. And I think that that's a different manipulation tactic. Certainly there's a lot of lying that happens too. But this deflection, we're going to drain the swamp by releasing the Epstein Files. We're going to find out what happened to JFK. We're going to deport everybody and, all of their neighbors too. And what's real deflection from some of the things.
And it's also a very smart cult leader tactic because it's easier to peg someone in a lie, right? Like it's easier to be like, look, he's never said I wasn't on the Epstein list, right? Because then it's like, you very clearly here said you were not. Here you are. Like right now, he tried to lie about never sending a hand-scrawled picture to anyone, right? And immediately start coming in the reports of all these pictures. He sends them out all the time. It's what he likes to do. So that lie,
you can get caught in.
You can get caught in a lie. And it's much easier to just be like, no, look over here, right? Like now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. I even see this, I don't know if it's intentionally, but a lot of the creators who are like these panic creators now, and it's like they tell you everything as is breaking news, but they never come back and follow up with anything. So it's basically given this impression to a segment of their viewers that like he's getting whatever he wants done, and in fact, like that's not true, right? He's been stopped in 95% of the things he's tried. And this is still America. There's still so much we can do to fight back, but it's like they want to keep you very on your toes. They want to keep you very insecure, and they want it to be not that clear that what they said didn't happen. It's just like, now we're on to the next thing, or now we're jumping over to this other thing.
Please go watch Daniella's stuff over on her YouTube, Knitting Cult Lady. Her Epstein video is absolutely incredible. UnCultured, her book UnCultured, helped me understand so much about my Mormon background. But even if you've never been in a cult, you are living in a cult right now. And it's really important to understand those manipulation tactics in part so that you cult-proof yourself. You say something that I think is so powerful. On your Epstein video, you say that to talk somebody out of a cult, we have some options. You can accept them. You can drive them back to the cult. You can drive them to another cult, or drive them to ultimately take their lives. And one of the reasons why that hit me so much was that when I left Mormonism and I stepped away from my whole entire crazy MAGA community, I lost my parents. I lost all my family. I was living in the middle of this huge community still, and everybody just ghosted me. Daniella, I got a call like a week after I left the church, and I told everyone, I'm leaving the church. This is BS. I was 44 years old. I got a call from my son, Brody, who was 9 years old at the time, his carpool, from one little Mormon mommies. And she's like, hey, we don't need you in the carpool anymore. I'm like, I need to be in the carpool because I have to have my kid taken to school 4 days a week. I'm driving that one day so I can work and stuff. She's like, we just don't want you in anymore. And that was it. And then she blocked me. She was a friend of mine for 20 years. I've never heard from her again. And I'm called Life Take Two on social media because as everything came collapsing down around me, I attempted to take my life. I was saved by a neighbor girl. I had to change my mind. I'm here today as a survivor of trying to unalive myself because when everything collapsed, I couldn't even figure out which way was up. And I had this feeling of, oh, yay, now I'm free from Mormonism. No, I walked up and there's no God. And that 24 years that I spent with this monster because I thought I was married for time and all eternity in the temple. Oh, that wasn't real. I was with them for nothing. And nothing made sense anymore. And I was lost and shunned by my community. So that literally drove me. And I've spoken to so many other people who, once they have that chink and they walk away, they go into this nihilistic void, and self-harm is a result of that for some people. But then I was going to other cults. So I go right into this hardcore Christian organization. I spent 4.5 years there and I was still deeply enmeshed in MAGA. And it's funny because I was finding every cult that there was until I got your book UnCultured, started following you, worked with Luna Corbin, her book Recovering Agency, and actually did some of the Stephen Hostin's cult deprogramming stuff and found a really good counselor. And it wasn't until that therapy that I was able to recognize cult tactics and finally free myself.
And that is super important because that, I think, people who haven't been in cults don't understand that, like, you can leave the cult, but you're still looking for that level of community. You're still looking for that level of certainty. You're still looking for that level of reception of control over your life. And it takes us deconstruction and healing and being able to name those things. Like, it takes time. So I always say, like, I have this 3-part model of deconstruction. You have the crack in the brainwashing, and you physically and mentally leave the cult. Yeah. Then you have a decade of deconstruction, which starts when you start it. You know, some of us like run for 10 years first. Then you have the decade of deconstruction. And then you have moving forward with no models and new models. But in that entire period between when you left the cults and when you kind of get, I would say, like, over the hill of the decade of deconstruction, you're super vulnerable to joining new cults.
Next week.
Because you literally have so many voids, right? Like, one of the things about high control groups is they give you a framework for how to do life, right? That is the promise of every high control group is if you do this, you follow our way. Exactly. It's the way. And we promise you that, like, you will win at life. And so when you lose that framework, you really feel like you are just floundering in the middle of nowhere. And that is especially true for us cult babies who never knew anything but the high control environment. So without thinking about it, we're looking for that next high control. So even, like, I look back, you know, I wrote a book about the army being my next big cult that I joined. But, like, in reality, in high school and college, I put myself into such a high control environment. I was working 2 to 4 jobs. I was making straight A's. I was going to be valedictorian. I truly believe if I hadn't fallen into a crazy relationship and gone into the army, like, I would have had a PhD by the age of 25 because I would have just let that system control me and give me the constant work and the constant striving and the next step and the next way to be, because I didn't truly understand how to just be in the world.
You're used to every move of your life being controlled.
And so for me, the army felt comfortable. Like, honestly, when I looked forward to joining basic training, I was like, I just think of it as just like falling forward into the hard embrace of high control. And so then it's not until I'm 28 years old, getting out of the army, new baby, all of this stuff, that I actually start to realize, oh, I have no way of knowing how to be in the world. And kind of what you said, we bounce into all these groups and then we finally, like, hopefully start to figure out deconstruction. I did the same thing you did. And then I just had to write the book and figure it out because I could just read the book.
It's funny. I turned my Christian church into a cult when it wasn't actually that culty. So, like, I would go talk to my pastor. I remember, like, a couple months after leaving Mormonism, I was 44 years old and deeply brainwashed. So then I joined this Christian church and I make an appointment. I call the office. It's this mega church. They have, like, I don't know, 30,000 people between 7 campuses. And I'm like, I need to sit down with the pastor so I can meet him and get to know him. And then I had questions about, like, what do you think I should do about my divorce? And what do you think I should do about my ex-husband? And can you pray about this with me? And he's like, it's not my job to give you advice and stuff. Like, what's this conversation about? I was trying to turn my megachurch into the Mormon church because I felt lost when, like, what did I actually need to do? If you were going to sum up in a nutshell, if people have friends and family that are coming out of the MAGA thing right now, if they're falling out of, a lot of people are leaving their churches right now, leaving religions, leaving whatever, finding themselves there. Like, if you were that person or you have friends that are that person, then what?
So this is the important thing about what you just described. And I learned this about myself as well, that, like, you were looking for a guide. You were looking for a guru, right? And that is one of the things we have to help people realize that they don't need, in a way, right? So first of all, like, it's really, really hard to engineer a crack in the brainwashing. And I believe that's because we buy into our own indoctrination. as teenagers or adults, like we buy into our own indoctrination, much like domestic violence, like until somebody's ready to go, like they're not ready. But once that crack in the brainwashing happens, right? And that can happen again, like people don't have to agree for the crack in the brainwashing, right? And I think this has been for a lot of people, then cracks are really good at letting the light in. So one of the things that I encourage is just have those conversations, just engage with those people again that maybe you've stopped talking to because there was no point. Like there's a point again. And like, ask them questions, ask them why they believe what they believe, ask them why this time's different, and just ask them a lot of questions. But something to realize kind of bigger to what you talked about is they're going to be coming out of this dazed and confused.
Right.
They're going to be coming out of this going, what the F did I just give the last 10 years of my life to, right?
Well, not running away from MAGA or from whatever it is, their ultra conservative lives. And I have so many people that are waking up. I'm sure that you're seeing this across your platforms too. Of course, there's a lot of people that are just, on the other side, like, hi, we've been over here being these moderates, or I'm an atheist or whatever, and I wasn't part of this movement. But I have a lot of people like myself who are leaving religions, leaving MAGA, and just in general, letting go of some of their really strongly right-wing ideologies, but they're not running away like, look at us now, we're free. That is almost never the reaction. They are going, oh my God, what just happened to me? And I think that it's a really vulnerable, really perilous time. And like you say, they're either going to go back to their other cult, they're going to find a new cult, they're going to go into existential crisis and not want to be here anymore. So the question that I'm getting from a lot of people who weren't part of like this conservative movement or the Trumpsters or whatever, they're saying, what do I do with my friends and family who are starting to show that their shelf is breaking, that they have these chinks? And I want to hear what you would say. What would you tell somebody who their friends or family have left or they're leaving? My only advice is if somebody had told me when I was a Mormon and then I left that I was, the bad dog, like, look at you, you pooped on the floor and then smacked me with the newspaper. If someone had tried to make me feel guilty, I may have gone running back to the Mormon church because those people would have embraced me and taken it right back. So I think beating people up for being part of this is not the way to do it. But like, what is?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I say cults in a lot of ways to prisons. And we know that from the outside, right? We know that like when you're in a high control group, you don't have freedom. And then once you get out, you're released back to freedom again, right? But the people that are in the cults don't realize it that way, right? It's not, oh, I'm so glad I had my freedom, right? Like you need the deconstruction for that. It's this thing that I totally believed in just fell apart.
Right. It plunges you into chaos.
So it's like, one of the ways I would say to treat them is like, imagine that your son or daughter or somebody you really love went off to join the military, very proud of themselves, very hopeful, and then came back because they had failed out. Like, how are you going to treat them? Hopefully, you're going to treat them kindly, right? You're going to understand that they are disappointed, whether you approved of this or not. Right? Like if my daughter wanted to join the military, I would do everything to make her not do it. But then if that was her decision, of course, I'm going to support her. If she came home broken, the last thing I should say is, girlfriend, I told you, right? Like I told you this was bad. I told you they were going to hurt you. Right? It's like we have to have some compassion and understand that whether I agreed with that or not, that was her plan for her life. And she went off to go do that. And now it's just completely fallen apart. And so it's like we need to have compassion. We don't have to forgive. And I think that's very different, right? And I think toxic forgiveness is pushed all the time.
Yes.
But there needs to be some level of compassion. And I want to tell my Larry King live story that I told in the Epstein video, if that's okay with you.
Yes, so good.
So in 1993, this man goes on Larry King Live to talk about the children of God. And he was up in the leadership, and he specifically explains how one of the worst things was that he was forced to he says, have relations with a 10-year-old girl who was the daughter of one of the leaders, right? And he says this, and he really, really thinks he's going to be able to explain cult control. He really thinks he's going to be able to get Larry and the audience to understand that he was under control. And he now thinks this is horrible, right? And I think he needed one word of compassion. But what he got was Larry King said, "And you did it?" And shortly thereafter, this man took his life. And I really like to say, like, I'm not in any way excusing this. The 10-year-old girl was my mother.
Wow.
But when people are coming out of control, right, all adults in cults are perpetrators, right? So every single one of them, whether they realize it or not, has been part of perpetrating the cult abuses on themselves, on other people, definitely on the children.
I was a moral monster. I was hateful and judgmental.
But if someone had called you that when you were just coming out, right? Like, imagine what that would have done. And so one of the reasons that people go back to cults is because they can't fit into the world. I would be willing to bet that if there's ever been a study done on why people join the military for the second time, it's because they can't
reintegrate,
fit in anywhere, and they can't find those things. They haven't deconstructed, so they don't realize like what they need. You know, for me, I realized I was jonesing for a mission for a long time, and not like in a healthy way kind of a mission. And so deconstructing those pieces is going to work. And I know that we are all disgusted with MAGA, right? And I know that we see it for what it is, that it is homophobic, that it is racist, that it is harmful, that it is selfish, that, you know, all of those things. But when people are coming out of the cult, it's like every person gets to decide how they're going to treat those people. But what you don't get to decide is that if they can't find acceptance and understanding,
you're back to the cult.
They're going to go back to that cult. They're going to go back to another cult, or they're going to end up in some version of severe trauma behavior, which is often ultimately can be taking your life, but otherwise very heavily medicating. And just sort of the bad stuff, right? So where I completely understand that people are validly so angry that there has been so much damage done. There has been lives lost. We are going to spend generations trying to put back what he's broken, right? So I'm not justifying any of the harm, right? Culture, organized crime, like bad stuff has happened. However,
but if your grandma, your boyfriend, somebody is stepping away from this right now as the ship is all sinking and they're trying to find that life raft to cling on to, we can't beat them over the head and tell them bad dog.
Right.
We just can't. I think it was so helpful for me leaving Mormonism that I had my ex-Mormon TikTok community. So I had other people who were also coming out and we could deconstruct together, and people like you who are the experts at it, who were just the safe haven to help me deconstruct the things that I had done that were just really ugly, bad behaviors that, I mean, I have so much regret. I always feel like everything that I do on social media is to apologize for Mormon me.
And what I want to say to people is like, I promise you the shame will come, right? Like people see this as giving people a free pass, right? But like when folks deconstruct, they will understand the damage that they caused, right? Like the way that you understand now the damage that you caused. And then they will be able to do something with that, right? Like, and what they do is up to them. But getting people to deconstruct is the work that we have to do, because it's not until they deconstruct that they can actually realize the damage and the harm and even make those apologies. We think that people are going to wake up and be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm out of that. Oh, thank you. You know, they're going to be devastated. They're going to be lost. People are in that kind of cult daze can be for years sometimes after they come out of cults because they don't know, what to do and what to focus on next. You ask for some actual advice. It's like getting people to figure out like, what did they like to do before? Right? Cults take all your time. And if you're born and raised in it, it's like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do with your time?
You're Mormon.
Mormon ladies, your house doesn't have to be as clean as you think it does. What would you do with all that time? Right.
And the hardest part is then to make the mission yourself. Someone commented that just a few minutes ago. And then you've had that mission, and the mission is building the kingdom, whether that's the American kingdom or the Army kingdom or the Mormon kingdom, children of God. When you've been kingdom building your whole entire life and now you no longer have that mission, I think that's such a profound statement.
And this is what I want to say about this. It's like you can make the mission yourself, and it doesn't have to be changing yourself.
Yeah.
It can just be understanding who you are. And this is where I connect the guide guru thing again, right? Like a lot of us go, okay, well, that guy fooled me, but like, who is going to be my guide? And I think getting people to understand that you don't need a person to guide you. You are the captain of your own life. You can decide what your values are. You can decide what you want to do with your life. Like that person that you were listening to before, they were lying to you, right? They had no control over your path. Like going back to understanding, like, what do I want? What do I want? What did I used to do with my time? One of the things people would report about QAnon when it all fell apart for them is they were like, what do I do with myself now? And it's like figuring out how to or I don't know if you've ever been like sucked into social media in a bad way and then had to like completely like cut it off. And it's like, what do you do with all that time that you used to spend on that? And that's where I think like we can help. We can give people, just show up with arts and crafts.
Let's go hiking.
Show up with arts and crafts. Yeah. Take them out into nature. Give them the space that if they want to talk, they can talk and you can listen. But it's more just like doing activities together. And that's going to help them, I think, be able to focus on you and remembering the relationship with you also that they have probably lost since they've been so intensely focused on those cults.
Daniella, can I tell you a phrase that I think was so helpful to me when I was leaving Mormonism? And I mean, again, white supremacy, Christian nationalism. I was not a nice person to a lot of people around me the 44 years that I was Mormon.
How did that oblige? But thank you.
One of the things that I'd hear variations of from the people who were still in my life after I left the church was just, Jennie, I love to see how radiant you are right now. I love to see the light coming out of you. I love to see the happiness. I love to see you at peace. I have a best friend who I hadn't seen for a couple of years. Then I got back to Utah and was able to spend like some face-to-face time with her. We've been friends since like we were in our 20s. And she's like, you're a completely different person. It's amazing to just see like the happiness pumping out of you all the time. And that to me was so much more helpful than just, you were a jerk and you said these horrible things to me and you did these terrible things. And yes, certainly some of the people in my life that I did harm when I was inside the Mormon cult have held me to that. Like, I have a couple of family members who don't talk to me because I was a jerky Mormon and I'm an ex-Mormon. They're like, you were jerking, you didn't apologize. And certainly people have like, Jennie, remember when you one time wouldn't let me have my girlfriend over because you didn't want lesbians at the family Thanksgiving dinner. That was horrible. But then they also still point out my progress and where I am today. And I think that that's really important right now for people coming out of like the MAGA hangover. It's to point out to them, you just seem like you're in a happier place.
Yeah. What you talked about really demonstrates the cult personality, right? So the way that cults work is they give you a pseudo personality, right? Like that's what the breaking and the brainwashing is for. And I think like we just think of Mormon face, right? Where you're glazed over,
Yeah,
You don't look happy. You don't look real. You look plastic. And that's a separate personality, right? So when you come out of the cult, and this is actually my last song in the musical, is going to be called Living With It. And everyone's taking off their cult persona and like becoming who they are underneath. One of my favorite scholars, Dr. Janja Lalich, cult experts, like she spends a lot of time going to court for cult members who've committed pretty bad crimes, but trying to explain that like you're a different person, right? And by all means, I'm not saying that means blanket forgiveness, but understanding that like you were this person under this, you're not that person anymore, right? As soon as you leave the cult, you begin taking off that persona, right? Figuring out how and who you actually are. And obviously, actively participating in deconstruction helps with that. I wrote a workbook for that that's coming out in January. But there's a process. And so I love this, pointing out to people that like they've come a long way. And like your mother-in-law, you know, folks in the audience, like she doesn't have to completely deconstruct and understand everything to leave the cult and start becoming kind of like a better person. Right?
Like this phrase, turn over a new leaf. And so if I was like fighting with my sister on like our Disneyland vacation, and then suddenly I'm like, you know, I'm tired of fighting with my sister. I'm going to be a peacemaker now. My granddad would just say, okay, you're turning over a new leaf. Let's see how that goes. And I think that's really important.
I just want to say, like, it's hard because the cult members have hurt people. To be very clear, like, we are asking people to go high when they have gone low, you know, and like, you're probably not going to get full apologies from your people, at least not for the next decade, but giving them a place to land. One of the biggest exit costs, I think, like the most hidden exit costs, is those bridges you burned on your way out, right? So like imagine my analogy of like the kid going into the military, right? Now imagine this is your son and he talked a bunch of shit to two of his best friends because he was going to go be a soldier and they weren't, and he was better than them, and now he fails out and comes home. Right? Like either you're not getting those relationships back or you're going to have to kind of like swallow some crow and go after those relationships to the people that you were horrible. So what I'm not saying is that anyone owes them forgiveness, that anyone owes it making it easier for them. But if we don't, then what? Right. You know, and so it really is, there's no satisfying answer here. Like we're asking y'all to go high when all they've been doing is gut punching you and the people you care about, and hoping that they will deconstruct and learn and do better.
Being part of the ex-Mormon community, and some of us were very like despicable people. I think that as you're deconstructing internally, a lot of us reach a point where we have that moment of, oh shit, I was a jerk. And then once we've deconstructed and when we feel safe, then we will start to reach out and make repairs. And I've spent the last 7 years of my life trying very proactively to make repairs for a lot of the damage that I've done. And that's the hope. Is people wake up enough that they're like, oh, I'm sorry that I was so hateful. Like, sorry, I ripped your Joe Biden sign out of your front lawn and like shredded it.
Many people are going to quiet quit and they're not going to do a full, like, you know, like coming out into being woke. You know, they're just going to go back into whatever they cared about before that you also didn't agree with. But like, it's better that they're not in the cult. Like, it's still better that they're not in the cult. And then one other thing that I want to say to people is just like, you don't owe anybody forgiveness either. You know, one of my things that taught me a lot was like, I called a Black woman exotic at my wedding and she told it to me. And I later on in my journey realized and had learned and apologized to her. And she was very cool about it. Like, we're not friends. It's not okay. There was none of that. It was just like, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm glad you're on this journey. And like, you're not for me. And I also think that's okay. Like you do not owe anyone bringing them back into your life if they have hurt you because they were in a cult or because they were brainwashed either.
My policy with my ex-husband, like I can say, I'm glad you're in a better place now. I'm glad you're being a better person, but I'll never forgive you. And I hope that karma bites you in the butt. Well, no contact. Like you can't really be around each other, but I'm you well and cheering you on and truly glad that you're in a better place. And I think that that's a really good stance too. And there are those people in our lives who have been so hurtful and so brainwashed as part of these movements that, maybe we don't need to have them in our lives at all.
Yeah. And, Tara Westover, who famously wrote Educated, has said this, where she says, it took her a while to learn that you can love people, but not have them in your life. And that is sort of the way I am with some people. I'm like, I have very specific people where I'm glad you're not in this cult anymore. Like, I'm glad you're not still actively hurting people, but like, you're not in my life because you haven't proven to me that you want to go any further than that, than just, not hurting people.
Very important. And we can be supportive and smile and not be proud of our lives. And for me, like I wasn't safe for a lot of people in my life as I was deconstructing Mormonism. I was still a toxic waste dump. But I had my ex-Mormon community, and there were a lot of other creator friends, and we were all kind of in the same place. So it was nice for me to but not necessarily be harming other people around me that would be triggered by that deconstruction process. I had a couple more comments from followers, and I'm getting a lot over on my page or over on my channel. So people want to know, and again, you're a cult expert, why Christian moms and dads and sweet little grandmas that, right, this nice family down the street, why are they okay with the deportations of kindergartners with cancer and alligator Alcatraz and the food burning that should have gone to children in the Middle East? Why are these really nice people okay with that? What was it that is allowing them now to still continue on this train with this movement? Is it certainly like Trump turned it up to 11, like his first week in office. He's like, we're going to dial this all the way up immediately. And there's still very nice seeming people that are just on board with this.
Yeah. And I like how you said nice seeming people, right? Because one of my things I say is like, well, if they're on board with that stuff, then they're not nice people, right? We call people nice people. And there's a lot of unpacking that goes into that. But, one of my things I always say is like, there were nice people in the sex cult too. If you're judging friendly as nice or doesn't scream at you or spit on you or whatever as nice versus like having actual values, then they're just not nice people. But that's because they've been brainwashed into a cult, right? And part of the process of pulling you into a cult is the dehumanization and the otherization of outsiders, right? Like, I don't know if we remember when Donald Trump said from 3 Mexican countries, and everyone only focused on he's so stupid and didn't talk about like, no, he's doing that on purpose, right? He's purposefully dehumanizing Latin America in general and trying to make all of that one thing, which is Mexican, which he wants you to think of as cartels and drugs and murderers. And some of them are nice people. It's all going to be in the musical too. So all of that to say is it's because they've been manipulated, right? It's because for the past decade, but really for the past 50 years, as this cult of like racist conservatism has been building and gaining political power, that's what they've been being told. That's what they've been being told is going on in their country. And these people are the bad guys. There's another saying that like all cults are death cults. And I think that's also true to the perspective that like folks will die for their mission. inside the cult. And they also have no problem with anyone who is an outsider or an enemy dying, right? And we can see this in Christian theology, especially, right? And this was actually my crack in the brainwashing from growing up in the cult, right? Like I always was like, I'm getting out of here. What is this? Do not like, just need to survive. But I still think I thought that like they're Christians, they're good people. Like this is just not for me until 9/11. And I'm watching live television for the first time in my life. I'm 14 years old. I'm watching just horrible disaster, right? We're watching people jumping out of buildings. And my people are praising God. And my people are saying, this is the promised destruction and judgment of America. And I was like, gross, right?
Yeah.
Like how this was one of my like, are we the baddies moments, like how could we be the good guys if this is what is how we're acting? And I had the same thing in the military where it's like, we go out there and we do these horrible things. And it's like, look, we all know that we're going to probably unalive some people, but you don't have to glory in it. You don't have to glory in the violence of it. And we do because we've been taught they're the bad guys. They're literally here to unalive us. In some cases, they just have. And now we're going to go out and we're going to be bigger. And we think of ourselves as good people. I was involved in war and I still think of myself as a good person until you actually like really, really start to get into that and deconstruct that.
What you're saying is these sweet little grandmas and like the 19-year-old girls that are all over TikTok with the American flag in the background and they're all, Trump and conservatism in America. They look like good people. They have good personalities, but that doesn't mean they're a good person. And they have some problematic indoctrination and behaviors that probably aren't safe for society.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's the public presentation, right? And the cult persona. Like I personally love it. People are like, Mormons are the nicest people. And I'm like, of course they are.
Always
They don't want you to look any further. Like cults are always the nicest people.
Yeah.
In the happy, shiny people, they talk about it. Like I had a huge realization watching that show because they literally say they're like Jim Bob Duggar was so confident in the control that he had over his family that he knew that not one of them was going to break rank and like talk to the camera people and all the people that were in this. And that is really one of the things that made me realize like how hard you're having to perform all of the time in cults. And I think like we all get that from the outside that like these blonde Mormon ladies and these trad wife influencers, like that's exhausting, man. Like you are just like performing all of the time. Right. I really want to challenge this like concept, right? That it's like blonde trad wife Mormon lady is nice because she's talking to you like this, and like knitting cult lady's mean because she tells you to sit down when you're wrong. But like if they're racist homophobes, like they're not nice people. Right. And that is entirely because they've been brainwashed. I always say we focus so much on why people join cults. And that's important to know, like all of the personality types that are manipulated. But people join cults because cult leaders build cults and cult recruiters go out and manipulate people. Like all of these people, 70 million people were pulled into this cult because the cult leaders wanted power. Right. And because Donald Trump now wants power. What I do think is hilarious is I think the cult thought they were using him as the figurehead, but actually he took their whole cult, right, and turned it into a cult of personality. The Children of God founder was actually quite good. Like the way he built up 10,000 followers in like 2 years was he was just going to all these other cults that weren't as good at doing what he did, and he just absorbed them. Right. And I mean, have the Mormons and the Catholics and the evangelicals ever been in bed together? One of my favorite lines on the musical is, Catholic, when are you going to realize the evangelicals hate you?
If you're just hopping on, Daniella's working on a musical. I cannot wait for this to come out. I need this in my life so much. I will never forget being a Trump supporter until just 2 years ago. I will never forget the first time on TV I heard Donald Trump say, "Make America great again. I'm going to make America great again." And I got goosebumps. I started crying. And I had pictures of like my grandma's house and Sunday dinners and like the Norman Rockwell painting. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, LGBTQ rights are destroying America. Roe v. Wade is destroying America. And the family's breaking down. And we're about to fall off a cliff. And God's going to withdraw his power from over our nation. And Armageddon's going to come and we're all going to die. That's literally what I thought. That's not an exaggeration. Every day it's like we're one day closer to the end times and Armageddon's going to come. And I hope that I'm ready. I have a 2-year supply of stuff. And when he said that you can read again, that's when I was in. It's like you can do anything you want to do. And if you're going to make America great again, and I had a very specific picture of when that was, then I'm on board.
There's purity involved in it, which purity is such a good tool to get people to push past anything. But like your description there, like that was such a great example of how it works, right? Because you, a good person, wanted America to be great again, right? Like you had been taught and indoctrinated with all of these things, but like you wanted the country to be great, right? But Donald Trump in 1996 resurrected the phrase, "Make America great again." Reagan had said him first and said, trademark that. That's going to work when I'm ready to run for politics, right? It was one of my favorite stories is that he trademarked "Make America great again" because he knew he could use it to manipulate people.
It may have worked on me so much.
So that's how it works, right? And it's not so much you were someone prone to joining a cult as like he did that. He planned that. And then he went and executed that. And yes, you fell prey to the con man, but like the con man was out there manipulating this whole time. So that's like also a message that I want to give to people. I have this book coming out, The Culting of America. By the way, pre-sales start August 5th. The book comes out January 20th. And I've just done this like deconstruction workbook that I think like might be super, super useful to just like people on their own journaling, walking themselves through like why this all worked for them. Right. And I just want to also give people this reminder that like, I hope nobody shames you, but if people do, come find different of us. Everyone needs space to like heal and deconstruct their cult experience. And so I hope you will find that and not like shame yourselves too much for it. Like you fell prey to a con man.
Read Daniella's book, Self-Help You So Much. I would pay big money for a hand-knitted bookmark in a signed copy of your book when it drops in January.
We are going to have a package.
For me.
We are going to have a package that is like the tote bag, and the tote bag's going to say, "I knit so I don't stab people." We're going to have a pair of custom knitting needles that look like swords. And we're going to have a pack of Knitting Cult Lady stickers that are like bookmarks, and it's got like half a day and a couple other things. And then the book and the workbook, and you'll be able to get like that whole like kit. So
we all need this.
It's going to be fun. Another fun thing I'm doing soon in the fall is I'm launching Love Bomb Collar of the Quarter like box. And that way, like people can buy this and then we can all like do this activity together. I'll have like different times throughout the month where I'll be like teaching people how they can make this art or like their version of it. Because I do really want to reiterate that like you got to find stuff to do with yourself after cults. And you also really need like arts and crafts and community to heal. So searching out those kinds of things right now is like a really good thing to do.
And if I hadn't had ex-Mormon TikTok, do I need to start like a little subgroup of like ex-MAGA? I don't even know. I'm diving into it.
I mean, I think so. Like, I think we're going to have like a huge community of people trying to deconstruct just what happens. And like your story of coming out of that. I lead these book clubs, and there are so many people to whom I say, like, hey, I recognize where you are right now. You're about 5 years behind me in this journey. Like, here's what's going on with me. Stay the course, right? Like, keep pushing through.
Be steady, yeah. Keep doing the work.
We need people at every level, people who have been like super deep in the cults and have just come out are super helpful for the people right behind them trying to come out. I don't know how you like to do your groups, but like I'm sure a book club at some point, like Deconstructing MAGA would be.
I'm so busy, but I feel like we need like a MAGA support group. I need one. I need one. I have my ex-Mormon community, but I don't have an ex-MAGA community. I don't know. Maybe we need this. Maybe this is.
So what I do is I have a book club. Like I have Cult Deconstruction Book Club. It's a Patreon level that it's run through. So it's still more this like open community type of thing. People drop in or drop out. But I definitely say like it's a cult deconstruction group. It's a space where people can find other people who are asking these same questions. And I hear there's this book called Cult of America that might be great in the MAGA deconstruction.
Great. I'm going to need that for sure. We'll launch the book club, but we're not going to have that until January. So I have one more question that everyone's asking in the midst of this Epstein stuff going on with MAGA. This is probably the number one question I'm getting, and it's shape-shifting of cults. So I came from the Mormon cult, which in my childhood in the 70s and 80s was a very distinctively white supremacist and like trad wifey type of cult, right? And then I was like raising my kids in this really weird era of Mormonism. And now all of a sudden the Mormons are wearing cross necklaces. They're all Christian. Women are working. There's gay people, LGBTQ more friendly, but not enough, not at all. In my childhood, Blacks were able to be full members of the church. They got the priesthood. So there's all this shape-shifting going on, but people aren't dropping off. Like you can say the second coming is going to happen in August of 1986, and then it doesn't happen and people are still there. And in the Mormon church really recently, and this doesn't seem like a big deal to anyone except for us ex-Mormons, they changed the garments, and the Mormon undies used to be a t-shirt. And the whole wardrobe, you have t-shirt and biker shorts. That makes your whole wardrobe such a big deal. And I was taught my whole entire life doctrinally that showing my shoulders was a sin. So I literally believed my shoulders and my thighs were sinful. They were going to induce men to do terrible things. And so now they have these tank top garmies and people are losing their shit. Like I have Mormons the cognitive dissonance, if they told us this was immodest and now it's not, but still a lot of people are staying. So my question is, I can go so deep and there's still people who are like the Epstein and now I'm not going to release the Epstein. And we have Alcatraz and all this stuff, and they still haven't left. Why is it that these cults can shapeshift and get rid of things or add new things, and people still stay on the train? Why are they still there?
No, I would say, like, there are some people that are never going to leave the cults, right? Like, there are some people that are just like, it gives them what they need. It gives them what they need. It helps cults. I think the reason we're in cults is because they make us feel superior, right? The world is confusing. We want to be assured that we're living life the right way, and we want to be better than other people. And this is what cults do, and safe. And I think that some people they'll just never come out of it, right? And we don't really know the numbers on that. I think it's higher than we want to think, but they just won't come out. But I do think even the Mormons, like, I still think it's breaking. So I think the shoulders thing was a huge deal. And first of all, I was so sorry for all my poor ex-Mormon sibs from another crib, because I was like, no, now you're going to have to find a new thing to prove that you're not a Mormon. I also do sell a tank top that says it was never about the shoulders. But I think, so the Mormon church did that, and the Jehovah's Witnesses allowed women to wear pants. And I think that's going to be a much bigger deal than they think it is, because these cults don't realize when they allow these big cracks in the control, like, they don't sit around going, okay, we're a cult, so we can't let this crack in the brainwashing happen. It's like they might also believe it's not a big deal, but it's a really big deal. And I think Mormonism's ending. I think MAGA's ending. I think that my evidence is that I know very few I know many, many Mormons who have large families, right? And very few of them, most of the children are still in, right? Most
And
of
our
the
Mormonism
families,
has ended. It's like they
they just
die,
haven't reached the tipping point yet of
but it's a different
realizing
church,
it's not going
different
to
doctrine.
last.
The Mormonism of my childhood no longer exists.
Has ended.
They've been
Yeah.
replaced. The body snatchers have literally come and taken over. And I'm like, this is not the organization that I was raised in.
So all of this, by the way, all of the change, I think, is because the information age, because they
Yeah.
have to try to keep up. And this is why I say, like, the thing that ended the Children of God at the end of the day was the internet. The thing that I think is ending Mormonism is the internet, because it is impossible to brainwash without isolation. The Children of God did this, right? The Children of God basically ended in 2009, but the whole 2000s, I would say, was like negotiating with the young. Okay, we'll give you email. Okay, and now we'll give you this, and okay, like now this, and like the Mormon Church has been doing this. I would say since they started letting Black people into the church, right? It was like, we got to shift this, we got to do this, we got to do this, blah blah blah, and it's like all of it is going to break it. It's Mormons are so massive that it's going to take a long time, right? But like, you can't let a bunch of light in. You can't let a bunch of different perspectives and different people into your cult without it ultimately breaking it. And so like the LDS church thinks that they're just letting people in here and doing this. But as you said, like the Mormon church of your childhood is already dead.
It doesn't
This is
exist.
the soup that they're trying to create. It's not going to work because you can't, just if you were ever to be like, oh yeah, okay, cult, like you can read whatever you want. Like we're cool. You can read outside books. Like your cult's going to fall apart. You know, I say they did this to the Children of God because we were racist, white supremacists, just like y'all. But then they took us around the world. And then because he wanted to push religious prostitution, he had to be okay with children from other races. And so then they told us that, you know, we were the same. So they like accidentally broke the racism that they were trying to use for control.
And the Mormon church has gone into Africa. And as of last month, 120% of the church growth within the LDS church is happening in the continent of Africa. And the scriptures actually don't contain racist scriptures that they do in English.
Right.
So
right. It's just like the army trying to keep everyone out that wasn't a straight white man. Right. But then as soon as you have to let more people in, you don't know. Like, you don't know how to predict what those people are going to change because those people have a different lived experience. Actually, I just had a really interesting conversation with a Black political scientist on my podcast, Cults and the Culting of America, which will come out tomorrow. And because I asked him, I said, like, do you think it's dying? The cults of like white supremacy and patriarchy. And he was like, yes. It is dying because you cannot let in people with different lived experiences into your cults and keep that same level of control. So that is why they've been panicking since the 80s, right? Like that's why right now they're trying to pull us back into racist conservatism and undo affirmative action and keep everybody out because your system of high control only works when it's operating the way they want it to operate. So every time these churches are forced to give a concession, I'm like, that's a crack. That's a win. Right. And then eventually there's just a tipping point. And for the Children of God that came in 2009, and they realized like, oh, we're not keeping the next generation and we're not going to be able to keep this going. So that's the like hopeful message I give to everyone. It's like the fact that we're seeing these churches change so much, great. Maybe there's a random chance they'll change into something good and stop manipulating people. Maybe. But if not, like every bit of it's going to break up, right? Like it's hard to hate up close. So when you're forced to let different kinds of people into your organization that you've been told were evil or bad or outsider, like you realize that they're not. you realize that people are just people. And like, if you're forced to give your, now all of the Mormons realize the shoulders were never a problem, right? So it's like, whether or not they wanted that to be so significant, like, everyone knows, their leadership was wrong about the shoulders their whole life. So like, what now? Right.
That was so what cracked me out. I became friends. I was taught to fear like Black people, Mexicans, non-members, anyone LGBTQ. And then I became friends. So I was part of a doTERRA MLM essential oils company. And I kept signing up all of these lesbian couples inadvertently, and they became some of my best friends. And they were so nice that it caused this like total brain collapse in me. It was like, wait a minute, I was taught that these are the most evil people in the world. And they are still some of my best friends to this day, right? And then like, I started making friends with people that everybody,
this is even why
the best people in the world, and they still are my best friends today.
It's even why it's funny to us that who were in the military that people think that like MAGA is going to go into the military and change the military. Right? Because it's like, no. Like, you get over being a racist real fast when you're in a foxhole with a Black man and a woman. Not that it deeply cleanses your soul, but like, you are forced into these situations with other people, like, that only brings light into situations. So like, this is good. What's happening right now is good. Every time these closed systems are forced to allow a concession in because they're losing their members, like, that's good. And finally, like, the underwear control was never frivolous. That's why we see it everywhere. The hair control, not frivolous. So I say cults always control appearance, and they always control 4 things: hair, body size, body coverage, and underwear. And none of those things are frivolous. Right? Otherwise, they would not work so hard to control them, and we wouldn't see it in every situation. So very important for recovering from the high control is like, I'm like, focus on those areas. Do crazy things, wacky things with your hair, with your underwear, with your body size, with your body coverage, because those things are making you out of control. And like, those cracks will eventually collapse things. If you're not controlling people's appearance, you can't control their behavior. If you're not controlling their behavior, you can't control their thoughts.
Is that just because if they can control that tiniest little really private, intimate thing, like the undies on my butt, they can control the bigger things? Is that what that's about?
When I had my whole what is it about underwear, this like brought it back to the mission to me. It was like, if they can convince you that their mission is so important that they even have to control your underwear, like, they can convince you that it's pretty important.
I spent 24 years in Mormon garments. And the day I left the church, I drove to Victoria's Secret and I was like, I need to buy some undies. And the girl was like, okay, well, what kind do you like? I'm like, I don't know. I've never had anything but garments. And she's like, what size? I have no idea. I wear my garments all the time. So,
and so I tell people all the time, right? I'm like, wear wacky outfits. Like, when you're in your process of deconstruction, wear wacky outfits, whatever that means to you. But for sure, if you were in a situation of high control, if any of the stuff we talk about or what's going on in the country right now is like triggering you, like, you've been under some sort of appearance control, whether you realize it or not. And that is definitely true for like white Republican America, right? Like, you've been taught to be beige, whether you realize it or not. And so like, doing the opposite of that is actually really, really important, because like, again, it's not frivolous. So like, having her hair be out of control is more important than we realize, right? Like, having those Victoria's Secret underwear is more important than we realize. And by the way, my little personal rebellion in the army when I deployed was I always had the Victoria's Secret like highlighter color underwear, because that was like, you're not going to get my soul. Like, you're not gonna get my underwear. So, all right, I must take off soon. Thank you.
Daniella, you've been amazing to talk to, and I'm just leaving talking to you feeling like there is hope that we can move into a safer space collectively as citizens of this beautiful planet. So you're always a delight. Your book UnCultured changed my life. I wouldn't be who I am today without the wisdom of people like you. And your book helped me in ways that nothing else could have. So you've been a tool that I've leaned into. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. And this is the best compliment you could ever give a writer. It's just like, your stuff helped me, you know? And I think especially with these trauma memoirs, it's like, we don't want our stuff to connect for people, but like, if it does, that means my stuff mattered.
Thank you so
really
much.
Appreciate that. And we will absolutely do this again. And Jenny's going to come be on the Cults and the Culting of America podcast as well.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We'll have more crossover. We can do this for sure again when the book comes out.
Okay, and I'll be posting this tomorrow over on my channel. You guys know where to find me. We'll have all of Danielle's books and links in the description. So thank you, my knitting cult friend, and have a great
Thanks so much. So nice to talk to you again. Bye.